Right. Hello, good evening, good morning, good afternoon, whatever it is, wherever you are. Spoilers. Right, good evening, everybody. My name is Paul. I'm also called Knack, and I'm also known as Mr. Cuddy2977, especially if you watch me on YouTube. I do the daily teaser quiz on YouTube and my blog, Knack's Old Peculiar, and I also do TV reviews and movie reviews if those are things you'd like to watch. If you want to watch those, feel free to explore my channel and have a poke around and see what you can see that you think would be enjoyable, if that makes sense. At any rate, it's Saturday the 3rd of May, and today is the day that I saw the 4th episode of the new season of Doctor Who. The episode in case was called Lucky Day, and I thought I should share what I thought about it. Episode 4, Lucky Day, opens with fireworks as we see the New Year celebrations by the Thames, celebrations that are seen in the year 2007. As fireworks explode over the London Eye, we can see the TARDIS materialise not far from the River Thames, and the Doctor and Belinda, Ncuti Gatwa and Varada Sethu, emerge to take bearings for the Vindicator. All of this under the watchful eyes of a young boy called Conrad. Many years later, we see Conrad, a now adult Conrad, played by Jonah Hauer-King, narrating an introduction to his podcast and telling us of his feelings about what he'd seen many years ago. And he also tells us that his guests will enjoy the interview in this episode of his podcast with the one person he could find who'd been inside the TARDIS. That person is Ruby Sunday. Right, what did I make of Lucky Day? What did I think of this particular episode? Have you heard someone mention a Dr. Light?
It's 22 hours.
Have you heard someone mention a Dr. Light episode? In other words, an episode with minimal input from the Doctor. There's a companion light episode as well with minimal input from the companion. They are episodes like Turn Left or 73 Yards, which focus exclusively on the relevant companion, or like Blink and Love and Monsters, feature characters that will only appear in this particular episode. And from what I know, they're usually made because one or the other of the main cast are busy shooting elsewhere. One or the other, possibly both in the case of some episodes, are busily shooting elsewhere. So what we have in Lucky Day is a very well-made Dr. Light episode, one that, like 73 Yards, focuses on Ruby Sunday again, and it has minimal input from Ncuti Gatwa or Varada Sethu, and it's a very well done Dr. Light episode at that. For starters, its central point is that a companion has a life outside their travels with the Doctor, and it's one that's very well done, beautifully done, I think. We get to see Ruby living her life, holding down a position with the unit, interacting with a strange family, and forming what seems to be a new loving relationship. Only to confess later on to Kate Stewart that, yes, she thinks she, like other former companions, has suffered as a result of their travels with the Doctor. It's a result of her travels with the Doctor and the results of this particular episode. It's mental damage that comes on top of the emotional damage, in this specific case, by Conrad's betrayal of her and Unia. I did tell you there were spoilers, didn't I? It's damage that's made very clear in a very revealing and very rare conversation with the unit's leader towards the end of the episode. And it's the only time, or the only other time I can remember something like it, is in the scenes we see in School Reunion, where Sarah Jane tells the Doctor what life has been like since they'd parted. It's a very rare set of scenes, and it's very appreciated, at least on my part. There's another story weaved into Ruby's. It's Conrad's story. Now, I have to admit, I found Conrad a very interesting villain. He's one we find charming and we don't expect any bad of in the first 20 minutes, half an hour of the episode. But as Lucky Day goes on, we see the reasons why he's made his decisions. The decision to betray Ruby, to see why he's taken no other actions that we know help him or help protect him from the aliens in this episode. He and his think tank friends are conspiracy theorists who feel UNIT and its staff are lying about defending Earth, are up to nefarious deeds that are no good. Now, granted, we can see his motivations. Being refused a job at UNIT is one of them, and his unhealthy relationship with his mother that we see early on in the episode, that's another reason. It doesn't excuse his treatment of Ruby, nor his invasion of UNIT HQ, but we have an understandable villain here, a human villain, even if he's not necessarily a particularly sympathetic villain. He's not very well behaved. Right, we have been given some very powerful performances, both from Millie Gibson and Howard King tonight as Ruby and Conrad. But those aren't the only good performances in this episode. Now, I have to admit to being riveted by Gemma Redgrave as Kate Stewart. She put in one hell of a performance, possibly one of her best in the role. There's, if you'll excuse me mentioning another franchise, there's an old episode of Star Trek Deep Space Nine called Equilibrium, where the previous personalities of Jadzia Dax, Terry Farrell, where her former selves get separated off and temporarily implanted into the bodies of some of her friends and co-workers. As I recall, Major Kira becomes a little old lawyer, her first Dax character. She's a little old lady, very prim and proper. One of Jadzia's previous selves was called Duran Dax, and he was the Hannibal Lecter of the previous personalities. He was the psychotic serial killer. And the scene where we meet Duran Dax, where they hive this killer off.
It's 22:15.
Thank you, killer. The scene where he has to be hived off and planted into a separate body, he ends up inside Avery Brooks's version of Ben Sisko. And I've got to admit, the scene where we meet Duran as Sisko, Sisko as Duran, is absolutely amazing to watch. There's a very subtle change of expression that Avery Brooks Sisko does to show us this isn't Ben Sisko anymore. It's Duran Dax. It's a killer. And it's quite unnerving to see that very subtle change. It's a credit to the writers who wrote the episode, and it's a credit to Avery Brooks, the actor who plays Ben Sisko. He can just do that very subtle change of expression that tells us the person he thought was a tough but well-meaning commander is now Hannibal Lecter. Is quite unnerving and quite amazing to watch. It really is. The reason I mention that is because that scene, that very subtle change of expression, was the only thing I could compare the very subtle change of expression on Kate Stewart's face when Conrad mentions her father, the late Brigadier Alistair Gordon Lethbridge Stewart. The look on her face, the very subtle hardening of Gemma Redgrave's face in that character is subtle, is frightening, it's unnerving, and it tells us exactly how doomed Conrad is. On top of that, and given that Lucky Day is a Dr. Light episode, Nshute's closing speech at the end of the episode to Conrad was utterly riveting. It was another superbly done monologue. It's superb and angry. Now, I know Nshute's version of the Doctor has picked up some flack for crying at every possible opportunity, but his closing speech in this episode, his "you want spoilers" part of this speech in particular, in the closing minutes of the episode, was the most restrained anger I've seen someone put in as the Doctor. Who needs a Capaldi-style explosive raging scene when you've got the 15th Doctor doing laser-focused fury? And all of that focused on snapping his fingers at the end of the speech. It literally was quite something to watch. There are probably other things we can highlight in Lucky Day, although I don't know if others will see them or agree with me in what I've seen, or even have totally missed everything as I have missed things myself. The obvious thing, or the obvious thing for me as a fan that I noticed was simply that Conrad's group's name is Think Tank. Now, if you didn't know it, a think tank is a group that comes up with ideas. They think about things and they're there to think about stuff and nail ideas down and write them up. They usually policy ideas for governments or political parties or for various different institutions. But occasionally I'm told it's used for scientific bodies, occasionally, and I'm very aware it's the name of a fictional scientific research group in Robot, Tom Baker's first outing as the Fourth Doctor, and it's also the name given to a scientific research space station founded by Skagra in the Lost episodes Sharda. The name gets used by the villains of the respective pieces and by the villain in Lucky Day. Go figure. The other thing that struck me is that it's simply this. It's simply that for all the romance that's at the heart of this episode, it's that romance between Conrad and Ruby. It drives the episode. Lucky Day is also something that Doctor Who does well and subtly when it's on full. Lucky Day is well-crafted message TV. It's message TV that tells us quite simply this, that those that spread deliberate lies, deliberate falsehoods, deliberate misinformation, they should be fought or fact-checked at best, or have their messages ignored at the very least. Personally, I kind of like the fact that it's got a message to it, and I can't help but wonder how many other people have noticed it, but I don't know if it'll slow down real-world Conrads. There's probably a few of those around that ain't going to be stopped by well-meaning messages. There is possibly a lot more I could say if I could be bothered to do the research at this time of night. I could be telling you that, from what I've understood, the overnight viewing figures for Locks and The Well weren't stunning, but their consolidated figures, their total 7-day figures, were very good. I can tell you we still have no word about Disney's streaming service still being involved or not. There's still no news that they've commissioned a Series 3. I could tell you that Conrad is a villain I expect to see more of, especially given that visit from Mrs. Flood, including with a set of keys. I could tell you all sorts of things. Instead, I will tell you this. Lucky Day is a suitably dark, menacing, intriguing story with some suitably dark, menacing, intriguing performances. Going on this, next week's episode better be good. At any rate, this is where I am going to leave things. It's getting rather late and definitely past my cocoa and bedtime. I'm going to leave it here, safe in the knowledge that I will be back next week. Looking forward to that week's episode. Before I close things, I will urge you to please leave me a comment on the blog version on this post on Nick Nack's Old Peculiar, or if you're watching it on YouTube, please feel free to leave me a blog post comment thing in the comment section under this video. It's down there somewhere. Leave us a comment. Be flattering or suitably insulting. And either way, if you'd like and share and subscribe, that would be greatly appreciated. And there's also going to be a tip jar in the corner there if you'd like to give me lots and lots and lots of money. Yes, let's leave that there, shall we? I will instead reiterate that I will be watching the 5th episode of this season, The Story in the Engine, on the Saturday, the 10th of May, and hopefully posting my written and video reviews sometimes after that. Hopefully, I will see you then. Take care, be good, be seeing you.